What is good, gamers? We are back once again, and today I have one that I actually kind of was excited to make a video about. So, I hope you guys enjoy this, and this is every exotic you want to avoid in Destiny 2. So, let's start off. So, we are doing this in like a top 10 style. So, I have 10 exotics, the 10 worst exotics in my opinion, ranked 1 through 10. And then I have 3 honorable mentions. Honorable mentions are not ranked, they're just there. But the top 10 are ranked. So we're going to do our honorable mentions before we do number 1. That's how the video is going to work. So let's start with number 10, Ashen Wake. These things are weak. Okay, the thing with these are fusion grenades grant increased throw speed, explode on impact, and stun unstops. Final blows with them grant grenade energy. So, they get intrinsic fastball with this. That's definitely not worth an exotic slot. Exploding on impact, I think, is a downgrade, because I feel like with fusion grenades, the whole idea of it is you're supposed to stick it to someone, and then it'll explode after a delay. Making it explode directly on impact just makes it feel weaker, to be completely honest with you. Makes it feel worse, honestly. And the best thing here, the only thing keeping this exotic alive is its unstoppable stun. That obviously works, giving it some usability in, like, Nightfalls. But, yeah. Also, fusion grenades are not on Titan Prismatic, so you are completely subjected to solar if you're using these. Giving it intrinsic fastball, all it takes is 1 energy. Like, how bad do you need 1 energy of your armor? And as I said, the exploding on impact I don't like. Final blows with fusion grenades grant grenade energy. I mean, I guess, but there are just better grenades for ad clear, too. So, even that just doesn't really make sense. It's just, this exotic is built to be something that the grenade itself isn't. And it doesn't really do anything perfectly, either. Like, sure, it stuns a champion, but, like, it doesn't do really anything else to help hurt that champion. And you're supposed to use it for ad clear too, because final blows grant grenade energy, and all of this stuff kind of ties together in a weird way. They're just a very strange exotic that I very much don't recommend. And if you really want to use fusion grenades, just get on Warlock and put on Starfire Protocol. Like, unless you're so locked to Titan, but you want to use fusion grenades, I really don't see any reason you would use these, ever. Except maybe an incredibly insane fallback option for unstop stunning, if you have a very specific build, I guess. Okay, Arbor Warden is number 9, and, oh boy. So, I know everybody is automatically going to be questioning why this thing is masterworked. That's because I got back into the game around Season of the Deep, and I got this thing very fast when I got back into it, and I actually really liked it at the start, but I very soon realized how bad this thing was. Barricade. Using your class ability channels defensive light inward, providing a grenade that creates a barricade on impact. This grenade that creates a barricade on impact is probably worse than actually just using your class ability. Because, so let's say you're in a pinch and you're getting melted by a bunch of guys. What you would usually do as a Titan is put up a barricade. But you have to, with this, you have to activate that barricade, which takes a decent amount of time, and then throw it down on yourself. That is a significantly longer, like, triple the amount of time it would take to just place a barricade. But the reason why it's higher on the list is because it does synergize with certain aspects. So it does work with Dranger's Lash and Bastion. So on certain builds, you could make this into like a shackle grenade or just a like overshield grenade. Honestly, like you could just throw it at your teammates and give them an overshield. If that's really the playstyle of your build, if you're going for like maybe lots of like stringing people up with Dranger's Lash, or if you're just trying to do an insane survivability build for your allies and not yourself, then maybe. But that's the only applicable use case of these things, so that's why it's on the list. So, let's get into number 8, and that is Blight Ranger. Oh my gosh. Okay, so this thing is not good. So, they did rework this recently, quite recently, in fact. Guarding with your Arc Staff does not consume extra super energy, and you can cancel Arc Staff early, temporarily increasing Arc weapon damage. I believe it's a ×4 weapon surge for Arc. And creating a blinding burst. Reflected attacks increase the damage of the burst, extend your super, and deal additional damage. So, what this thing is mainly about is guarding with Arc Staff. It does massively increase damage, and it extends your super, and does not consume extra super energy, so it gives you an insanely long super while you're guarding. But the thing is, who is guarding that much? Like, genuinely though, if you're using your super to guard like that, I really don't see the point. And I've tried this thing out, like, where it's supposed to quote-unquote shine is things that just send out a torrent of damage on you, so like a Shrieker or a Ogre, and I honestly thought this thing could kind of cook on the Ogre and Grasp of Avarice, because that thing just melts you, and it is very known for dying in damage to that thing, to Phyresia. And I tried this thing out. Even while guarding, even the reflected projectiles, I believe, do 400% increased damage. It still only pulls off like 400k. And since the super is so incredibly long, that's really bad. And I even tried guarding and then shaking in a couple of attacks here and there, and it still was awful. It's just... it's really not a good exotic. The deactivation thing that it got from its rework is almost completely useless. And the extension just really doesn't work. It doesn't make Arc Staff very better. Just use Radiant Flux, and you will find that Arc Staff is significantly better with that, but probably not with this. Alright, number 7, Frosties. Now, a lot of people actually like Frosties, from what it seems at least, but oh my gosh, these things are bad. Like, okay, so how these things work. All it does is increase grenade, melee, and dodge regeneration while sprinting. Dodging increases your sprint speed. What do I have to say about this thing? The rapid cooldown effect is incredibly weak. Like, almost insignificant. While I'm running, I noticed if you have good enough stats, it almost does completely nothing. Like, it's almost completely dead useless. And also, if you're going to be sprinting around that much to where this actually makes a difference, your teammates are going to hate you. Because if you're constantly sprinting around, especially during damage, because let's say you want to get some more abilities in your damage rotation, so you're sprinting around, you'll probably get your teammates killed here and there, and they're going to hate you for using these things. So not only will you get clout from your teammates, they just really aren't good in general. There's way better options to increase regeneration of your stuff, like Eye of Another World. Get on Warlock and use that, or Starfire Protocol, or what other spam ability exotics? Stuff like that. This is just a bad option, and the only good thing that I could see use of it is dodging increases your sprint speed, but I believe it doesn't even increase your sprint speed by that much. And transversive steps literally exists, and stompies exists too. So I just really don't see the point when both of those exotics exist, and line rampant exists too. So each class has one. So that is really not necessary. Okay. Number 6. Gsen Vest. Oh man. Okay, so I have quite a lot to say about this one. I hate this exotic with kind of a passion. Not only do you have to use Spectral Blades, which is arguably the worst super in the entire game, you have to dedicate your super completely to ad clear, meaning your DPS is complete garbage. And even in an ad clear scenario, Spectral Blades is so incredibly bad, and there are so many better supers that will clear ads. And it gives you extra super energy while in your super. Sure, it will extend your super, but it does nothing else. And also, it requires you to use your heavy attack every time to extend your super. So half the time you're just wasting your attacks, and it's just garbage. Like, oh man. Also, Spectral Blades obviously is non-prismatic, so you're locked to Void. But Void is good on Hunter. But Void on Hunter is kind of supposed to be support with shadow shots. The whole build is kind of around invisibility, support, weaken, just getting off like debuffs and whatnot. This completely defeats that purpose and kind of messes up your entire subclass and does almost nothing for the super itself. It's just terrible. I have absolutely no reason to use this. Even while testing it, I was just like, oh my gosh, this is complete garbage. Even in a patrol zone, I was just like, wow, this is garbage. Please don't use this. Like, I was so tempted to put this lower on the list, but I couldn't because I know there are worse exotics. Yeah, it's just a painfully bad exotic. Okay, number 5, Astrocyte Verse. Now, in PvP, this is actually a decent exotic. But this isn't a PvP list, is it? Blink. Any high-tier player knows that Blink is incredibly unreliable. Just use a normal jump, like, please, dude. And, I think the only good benefit from this thing is Blink causes targets near you to become volatile, so you can use your movement ability to add debuffs. That's the only reason I see it, and if you have an insane debuff Void build, then possibility. And also, Nova Warp, Dark Blink. Who actually uses the Blink anyways? Like, I really don't if I'm actually using Nova Warp, which is never, because Nova Warp is a garbage super. I actually made a video on it. I made a video on making a build around the worst exotics of each class, and, yeah, and I had to use Nova Warp with, not the worst exotic of each class, oh my gosh, around the worst super of each class. And Nova Warp was the worst super on Warlock, and I don't think a lot of people can argue that. So, it requires you to use the worst super and a movement ability that is insanely unreliable. And airborne effectiveness is almost completely useless. Like, don't build into airborne effectiveness in PvE. Like, just don't. That's not smart. And I'm pretty sure everybody knows that. So, if you really, really need more volatile in your build, I guess. But you would have to be in a space where you can't fall off the map, because, especially in a jumping puzzle, but pretty much anywhere where you can fall off the map, Blink will probably kill you. Like, when I was trying to get damage for this build, I always damage test on the Grasp of Avarice Ogre. And I couldn't even get over the bridge. The broken bridge to get to the boss. Yeah, I struggled even crossing that. Like, struggled hard. I mean, I got over it like 1 in 5 attempts. It's just, Blink is really bad. I'm almost guaranteed you don't need Volatile that much, and Nova Warp is awful, and it barely even benefits Nova Warp in the first place, so just, yeah. In PvE, garbage. In PvP, I guess. Number 4, Mook 44 Stand-Asides. Oh my gosh, use Peregrine Greaves. Please, dude. So, these things grants an overshield while you're sprinting at full health with Seismic Strike, Hammer Strike, or Shield Bash equipped and charged. So basically, you get an incredibly weak overshield, like really, really small overshield, when you're sprinting at full health with one of these 3 melee abilities, and it has to be charged. You have to have all those factors to get a tiny overshield. You have to be sprinting, you have to have max health, you have to be using one of these melees, and it has to be charged. Isaiah. That's one of my friends. That was just random. Hits with these abilities recharge a portion of your melee energy. I believe it's 50%. But realize that you could just put on Insurmountable Skull Fort, and every single one of your Seismic Strike kills will give you the whole charge back and start health regeneration. This thing gives you half of the charge. And sometimes, when the circumstances are right, gives you a small overshield. These things are so weak, it's a joke. This is another exotic I made a video over. Making a builder on the worst exotic of each class. Now, this is not the actual worst exotic of the Titan. But I only did that because the next exotic, which I will not spoil because it's farther in the list, is so bad it's almost completely impossible to build around. So I had to do this to make content actually interesting. Okay. So, next one. Number 3, Mechaneer's Trick Sleeves. The most situational exotic in the entire game. So, what this does is increases sidearm, airborne effectiveness, ready speed, and reload speed. That's basically all you're ever going to see with this exotic. Because what it requires next is insane. So you have to be critically wounded, but you can't be holding the sidearm. So you have to be in a position where you can get critically wounded and then swap to the sidearm quickly. And what it does is reloads it and increases its damage, and sidearm final blows reload the weapon and extend the effect's duration. But do you know how hard that is to do? Like, when I first got this exotic, I was like, oh, sidearms. That could actually be interesting, since there's actually some good sidearms coming out now. Except for the fact that when I actually read its perk, I was just like, when is that actually going to happen? Because you shouldn't be critically wounded very often. A good player is not going to be critically wounded 24/7. And even then, the chance that you have another weapon out, and then you get critically wounded, and then you really quickly swap to a sidearm is so incredibly rare. You rarely will get the use out of this. And all you will basically ever see is airborne effectiveness, ready speed, and reload speed. And even that is like, using that as your exotic slot is completely pathetic. Like, oh my gosh. Isaiah. Yeah, shout out to him, Isaiah. He's in my streams a lot. That's just a random side note. But anyways, yeah, increases sidearm, airborne effectiveness, ready speed, and reload speed. This thing is so incredibly situational, it's actually a joke. I really highly do not recommend this. It just really doesn't work. Yeah. Okay, let's get to number 2. Prometheum Spur. Oh my gosh, this exotic is so bad. It's very, very similar to Gsen Vest, but actually worse. Daybreak Final Blows create a healing and empowering rift at the target's location. While Solar Super is equipped, Solar Weapon Final Blows grant rift energy. Standing in a rift increases this energy. Final Blows while in a rift consume class ability energy to create a healing and empowering rift at the target's location. So, not only do you have to be on Solar Warlock, but Solar Warlock is good, but you don't get access to Well. Because you have to be using Daybreak. And not only do you have to be using Daybreak, you have to be using it for ad clear. Why? And not only that, at least Gsen Vest extends its super so you can get more kills with Spectral Blades. But what does this do? It creates a freaking rift. Are you kidding me? Like, this is complete garbage. And honestly, how bad do you need a healing and empowering rift? Like, do you really need them both? Honestly, just get 2 warlocks in your fire team and make them use their rift at the exact same time on top of each other. It's really not that hard. I mean, most things in this game are a team scenario at this point. Most high tier things anyways. So you could do that so easily. Just get 2 people to use different rifts and use them on top of each other often. And you'll get that exact same effect, but so much easier, and you can use a better build. And, oh my gosh. Okay, while Solar Super is equipped, Solar Weapon Final Blows grant Rift energy. That is the literal only good thing, is getting your class ability up fast with a really good ad clear Solar Weapon. But you realize you have to use your Super and one of your weapons that's Solar to do ad clear. So you have to dedicate a massive portion of your build to pure ad clear. Standing in a rift increases this energy. Final Blows while in a rift consume class ability energy to create a healing and empowering rift at the target's location. So let's say you're standing in a rift, and this is Grandmaster scenario. So like difficult sort of stuff. And you actually somehow manage to get your whole rift back while standing in a rift, which is incredibly rare because it really doesn't give back that much rift energy. Even while standing in a rift with the increase, it really doesn't give that much back. So let's say you're on a rare occasion where you can actually do that, and you get another kill, and you create a healing and empowering rift, and you go there, and you just get obliterated. Because to get in that healing and empowering rift, you have to go right into the fray of all the ads, because that's where you killed the guy. It spawns it at the target's location, not your location. If it spawned it on your location, people could actually have a reason to vouch for this exotic. But no. It is bad. It actually encourages you to do something that will probably get you killed 9 out of 10 times. Massively don't recommend this. This will make you worse. You could choose literally any other warlock exotic and you would be doing better. Okay, now let's get into honorable mentions before we get to number 1 now. After hearing that spiel about Prometheum Spur, you guys are probably going to be, probably wondering, what the heck is number 1? But let's get into honorable mentions first. So, number 1 in honorable mentions, I mean, they're not exactly listed. All of these are in the same category, pretty much, is Crest of Aop High. Now, before this season, I would have put this in the list. But it did get a buff that kind of saved it from getting into the list, because this now works with Thruster. So what it does is generates an additional orb from supers and a healing pulse when Barricade is activated. So, you get healing from class abilities, and now that it works with Thruster, it's basically Wormhus Crown, except the thing is, it's actually better than Wormhus Crown, because it gives more health, and it also generates an orb. But this thing is clearly a relic of the past, because just a one-time healing pulse, and one additional orb of power, I mean, dude, with, like, Reaper, and, what is it called? Firepower, heavy-handed. All three of those are getting you, like, an obnoxious amount of orbs, and attrition orbs is also like flaring up in the meta right now, because using that with the VS Velocity Baton is generating hundreds of orbs. So using an exotic that will get you one extra orb from every supercast is almost completely insignificant, because pretty much anything can do that now. The healing pulse is the big part of this exotic. And happily enough, Thruster is on Prismatic, so you can use this on Prismatic, as well as it is on the class item too. So you can use this on the class item, and it's actually pretty good on the class item if you pair it with another barricade thing and use it as a barricade build. It's actually quite effective. So that's the reason it's not on the list. It's actually pretty usable now, since it's very viable on Prismatic, and it's on the class item, but just from its perk alone, you can kind of tell it's a relic of the past, because it really does things that were a lot more significant in the early stages of the game, but are way easier to do. Like, there are so many ways to heal yourself now, and way too many ways to get orbs at this point. So, yeah. Also, if you're asking why I have that masterworked, that was another one I kind of liked. I liked using this at one point. So, yeah. I was a very basic player. Next on the honorable mentions, Gemini Jester. This thing is interesting. So, a lot of people are going to go crazy when they see this on this list. Like, I'm already predicting the comments. I'm probably going to have at least 2 or 3 comments that'll say, like, why is Geminis on here? I love Geminis. They're so useful. But the thing is, they're good in PvP. They're really, really effective in PvP for disorienting your enemy and then going for a quick cleanup. But in PvE, so dodging disorients nearby enemies and temporarily removes their radar. But think about PvE. Your enemies don't have radar. So this entire second half of the perk does absolutely nothing in PvE. Even in Dim, it's not even included in the PvE part of the community insight, because it just doesn't work in PvE. It's completely useless. So you only get that first half, dodging disorients nearby enemies. So basically all it does for you is gives you a dodge that disorients in a kind of okay range for 5 seconds. It's a 5-second disorient. So, honestly, you could honestly just do this with a blinding grenade launcher. Just put on a blinding grenade launcher. Malicious birthright, ignition code. Yeah, stuff like that. Just put one of those on, please. Like, it is not worth taking up your exotic slot to just disorient. But the reason why it's not on the list is disorient is useful enough, and you can build into your dodge enough to where using this with, like, Threaded Spectre and Winter Shroud can actually make your dodge pretty powerful. Now, there are way better dodge options on Hunter, but this is still kind of viable when you're using that build, and it's viable enough to take it off the list, but it's still something I wouldn't recommend. And the final one of the honorable mentions is Wormhus Crown. So Wormhus Crown is basically the exact same thing as Crest of Aop High, a relic of the past. Dodging gives us small health and shield bump. This health and shield bump is actually smaller than Crest of Aop High, so this thing is even worse. It also doesn't get the extra ore benefit, but it still is. A lot of people actually really, really like this thing for the instant healing you can get, because dodging is a little more reliable in like an instant basis than something like a barricade is. Even thruster, I think dodging is a little bit faster than a thruster, so it does kind of work better with that class ability, but that still really doesn't justify its use. And this thing is very good in PvP because that little boost of health is enough to get you to win a gunfight with a player with your similar skill or below it. But in PvE, you have access to large amounts of healing with stuff like knockout, concentration, and there's just a lot of exotics that can build into that. Even on Hunter, there's a lot of stuff you can do that can insta-heal you, to where you don't really need to take up a lot of your build, your exotic slot, just to do that. And a lot of people are probably going to be mad about this, because I know a lot of people like this exotic, but it's just really not very effective in PvE, because in PvE, that little amount of health and shield isn't going to get you very far. In PvP, it definitely will, but in PvE, no, it won't. Like, you need big amounts of health. You need big amounts of survivability, crazy builds, all that stuff. This just really doesn't do that. So, I would not really recommend this. But, I mean, if you need a source of instant healing in your build, let's say your build is actually really powerful, but it's just, its survivability department is garbage, then maybe. But otherwise, probably not. And to the number one worst exotic in Destiny 2, none other than Antaeus wards. These things were a monster in PvP and still kind of work there, but even in PvP scenarios, it's bad. But this is absolute. It is the complete piece of garbage in PvE. All it does is, while sliding with full class ability energy, so you have to have full class ability and you have to slide, you gain a frontal shield that reflects incoming damage. Yeah, you get a little shield for like the 1 second of your slide. After reflecting damage, your class ability is depleted based on the amount of damage reflected. So you're telling me that if I slide and I get shot, sure, I'll reflect a tiny bit of damage, but it takes away half my class ability? Like, this exotic makes you worse in PvE. Because let's say you slide, you block a little bit of damage. Okay, cool, you saved yourself a little bit of damage. But what if you get in a really bad situation where you need to use your barricade? Oh shoot, it's not charged because it took your charge. You die. And you might cost your team a wipe or something. Like, it's physically making you worse. Like, every other exotic at least benefited you in a very, very small way. But this thing actually makes you worse. Like, it would be better to use only legendary armor than to use this. Because it could cost you deaths because you don't have your barricade to save you. Because you reflect damage with your little slide thing. And it's completely impossible to build into because very, very few things do sliding. So the only thing that I can think of is concentration and a slide shot or slideways grenade launcher. That's it. And even then, it's not going to synergize that well with it. And it taking your class ability completely shatters this exotic from maybe having a tiny bit of survivability potential, so maybe it would be a little bit higher up on this list, to becoming the literal worst exotic in Destiny history. Like, Skull of Dire Ahamkara pre-buff, like the one that you had to use Nova Bomb for ad clear, yeah, that actually benefits you. Antaeus wards, actually make you worse. Like, I cannot stress enough, if you get this exotic, don't even put it on. Like, honestly, just trash it. Keep it as a collectible, maybe. I will admit, the one thing about them is that they look cool. Otherwise, they are the worst exotic in the game. Please avoid these. So, that'll be all. One last thing before I end the video. I just want to thank everybody for the support I got on my last video. It has hit a channel high in both views and likes. And I believe even comments hit a channel high. And I got a bunch of positivity on that. I did get a little negativity. The only thing is, like, I want you guys to recognize that I'm not an insanely serious player. Like, I do some hard stuff. I do Grandmaster Nightfalls. I'll do dungeons. I'll do an occasional raid. But I'm not a player that goes into spreadsheets and just studies, basically, the meta. I don't do that. I just want to make fun content that people like to watch and that people enjoy. I want to make it fun for myself, too. I don't want to make it a miserable experience to make these videos. I enjoy making these videos, and I enjoyed making this one, and I hope you enjoyed it too. But that's all I really had to say. I very much thank you for your positivity, and I want you to keep that positivity up. So, I hope you guys enjoyed. That'll be all. We'll see you guys later. Bye.